Alright, so this video is going to walk you through the CO2 blank card model. So first thing that you need to do is make sure that you have your dimensions with you, because I am not going to give you the correct sizes for this. So make sure you have your measurements that you got the other day in class. So what we're going to be doing is modeling your CO2 blank, and we're actually going to be creating a little wind tunnel box for it. This is what we're going to use for our simulation. So we're going to be using Fusion 360 because it works better with CFD, which is our fluid analysis program. So here's Fusion 360. Looks kind of like Onshape. So we can see that we have our sketching tools and our 3D tools. Kind of works in a similar way. Now, if you try and right-click and kind of move around, you'll notice that it's a little bit different. Like the controls aren't exactly the same. So I would recommend that the first thing that you do when you open this is we come up to our picture, to our profile over here, click Preferences, and we're going to change this interface so it matches. So make sure you're on General, so you'll have to click on General. And down here where we have Pan, Zoom, and Orbit, let's switch that to Tinkercad, and let's reverse the zoom direction. So we'll hit Apply and OK. And now when we right click and move around, it feels a little bit more like Onshape, which is what we're used to. So what we're going to be doing is modeling that CO2 car blank. So let's make sure that we're in inches. So if we click on the little drop down here, under Document Settings, should say inches, IN. If not, we can click on this little icon right here and switch it. It's one of the other things that's a little bit weird about Fusion 360. When you click on stuff, sometimes it just pops up over here. So you can see that we're in inches, so we'll just go ahead and close that. So we'll cancel. So just make sure that's in inches. Alright, so now here's the part that will probably feel a little familiar. So we're going to go ahead and create a sketch. And I want to create this sketch on the front. That's just going to help make the orientation a little bit simpler when we go through and do this later. So we have our sketch tools that popped up. So this should feel kind of similar, right? We have our line tool, rectangle, circle, all those tools right there. So let's get our line tool. And this is going to be 12 inches long. So I just clicked on that. Now Onshape's a little different. With Onshape you click, then you can enter your dimensions. With Fusion 360, you don't actually click to finish it, then add the dimension. So you just type in your dimension. So 12 inches, that one is correct. That's your one freebie. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and use our line tool, get the back. I'm going to say 3. You guys are going to want to use whatever you actually have for your dimensions. Come over here and down. So we have our face. Now for you guys, like I said, you're going to actually have to use your dimensions. So mine, I had 12. This is the dimension tool right here. By 3 by sorry, gotta finish that. By 12. That by, I had this front part was 1 inch. Okay, so that's the dimensions I used. Those are actually not correct. You'll have to go ahead and use your dimensions that you measured. Okay, but our sketch is good, so we can go ahead and finish now. So just like with Onshape, once we have our sketch, we can extrude. Just like that. One thing to make sure you're in the solid workspace. Okay, not in Surface or Mesh or anything else like that. So Fusion 360 has different sets of tools and everything for different workflows. Make sure that you're in solid. And we can go ahead and extrude this. I'm just going to drag it out a couple inches. I want you guys to use your exact dimensions, right, that you measured. So I'll just say 2 inches and OK. So got our solid body now, but we need to cut out the CO2 hole, the hole that's drilled in the back for the CO2 chamber. So we'll do a sketch. Make sure you click on the back face here. I'm just going to create a little circle and extrude it in, and I want you guys again to make sure you use your correct dimensions. And I'll just pull that in. So there's no cut or there is a cut. In Onshape it's remove, or you can just drag it in and it'll automatically change. Or to make it a cut, we could also just say negative distance here. Okay, so we have our Finish that up, and now we have our blank model, but we're missing a couple things. So first, this kind of looks like a boring color. So what I'm going to do is, let's go and change that a little bit. So let's click on bodies, and body 1 is not a very descriptive name. So I'm going to double click on that, and let's call it CO2 blank. And let's go and change the color a little bit. So I'm going to right click, and if we go to appearance, we have all these different materials that we can use. And if anything is ever hidden over here, just check these little double arrows. So if we look down here, here's all the different materials that we can color this with. And of course ours is wood, so I'm going to scroll down to wood, and we're just going to grab whichever one. You can make yours whatever you want. So whatever wood color you want, whatever looks good, just drag and drop it onto the body and you have your appearance. Okay. Next thing we need to do is actually change our material. So when you add an appearance, it changes what it looks like, but it doesn't actually change any of the densities at all. So densities are going to be important when we do our fluid analysis, when we do our simulation, and that's going to change how the air interacts with it. So what we need to do is, again, we're going to come over here, right click, close this. Come on, computer's messing up a little bit right here. There we go. Alright, just had to hit enter. Alright, so if we right click and come to physical material, this is where we're going to actually apply material that is going to change the properties of it. So let's look at our physical materials. Lagging a little bit. Come on. There we go. So we have these materials here. Now the wood that we have is actually called basswood. And that's the blocks that we have in class that you're going to be cutting are made out of basswood. So we need to find what the density is. So let's look what the density is. And the reason we're doing this is if we look here in our materials, we don't actually have basswood, so we can't apply that as one of our materials. So what we need to do, you know what, for that, let's do wood density, I can spell chart. And if we look here, we can see basswood has a density of 24.8 pounds per cubic foot. So what we want to do is find something that's close to that we actually have. So if we look, balsam is kind of close, but we don't have that. We have ash, birch, Douglas fir. So we're going to find something that's close to 24 that we have. So here's pine. Ponderosa pine is pretty close. That's 24, 28. So I'm going to come back here and see if we have pine. And I'm just going to go with a generic pine because that works. So we'll drag this over. And it didn't change the way it looked too much, but our density has now been changed. So I'll go ahead and close that, hit enter. And that's applied now. And we have our CO2 blank. We have the hole cut in. The next thing we need to do is move it a little bit, because if we think about how this is going to work, right, we're going to be putting wheels on this and setting them across the gym floor. So it's not actually going to be sitting flat right on the floor like it is here. So there's no space underneath this. But when we actually race these, because they're going to be on wheels, there will be a little bit of an air gap underneath there, right? And we need to account for that because air can flow under that. So we need to move this up about 0.25 inches. So we're going to right click on CO2 car blank and move it. And all I have to do is drag this little arrow, and we're going to move it 0.25 inches. And now it's kind of floating in air, and that'll give us a little space for that airflow to go underneath. Cool. All right, so we have our cars all modeled. There's one more thing we need to do, and that is to create our actual box here. So this is going to be our container for our air, kind of like a wind tunnel. So what we need to do is we're going to create a 14 by 35 by 10 inch box around this. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to use the bottom view because that's going to make it easy. And we're going to create a sketch on this plane, not on the bottom of the car, but on the plane. And what I'm going to do is get a rectangle And I want a center rectangle because that's going to make it easier to draw from the center of my body here. So I'm going to pick a point that's about in the center. It doesn't have to be perfect. And the size of this again is 14 by 35. So come out here, we'll type in 14. If I hit tab, it takes us to this other dimension. We'll type in 35. And there's our box. So we'll go ahead and finish our sketch. So there's the basis for it. And this is going to be 10 inches tall. So let's extrude this 10 inches. It's going to change to cut. That's not what we want. We just want new body. Okay, so we'll say new body and we'll hit OK. And it kind of covered up our car, but that's okay. What we're going to do is I'm going to double click on this. We're going to call this our wind tunnel. And the way we can actually see our car now is if we right click on this, we're going to go to physical material, and what we're going to do is we want to make this out of air, which is a gas. So I'm going to drag air onto there, and that's going to make it transparent, but it's also going to give it the correct density because we want this to be made out of air. So there we go. So that's now made out of air. So I can just get rid of this, close. And I want to actually make this kind of bluish so I can actually see it a little bit. So I'm going to go to Appearance. And I'm going to use that. I'm going to use, let's see, a little bit of water. Yeah, nice little blue water. That gives it a little bit of an appearance so we can kind of see it. And there we go. So we have our wind tunnel, we have our CO2 car blank, all that stuff's good to go. So here's the model. We have that done. Let's look at what you need to submit. So for this, you're going to submit a screenshot of the completed model. So we'll just take a screenshot of that. You need to have your mass, surface area, volume, XYZ, center of mass, the density of basswood, which you can just Google that. The name and density of the wood that you chose, you can just Google that. But you also need the mass, surface area, and volume. So let's see how to get those. So if we right-click on your CO2 car blank, one of the things that we get is our properties. And that's going to be over in our, here, properties. If we click on that, we can see our area, density, mass, volume, material, center of mass, all that stuff. If you want, you can just screenshot this as well, or you know what, you could probably just take a screenshot of this screen right here that shows your model as well as your properties, and you'll be good to go. So there's a bonus point available, so if you stick with the video for right now, you're still watching, I will give you a bonus point if you do a render. So one of the nice things about Fusion is we actually have a whole lot of other stuff. So Onshape, right, just gives us CAD, but with Fusion 360 we can also do manufacturing, so we can do CNC files for CNC, we can do simulation, animation, so you could actually have parts move around. But one of the things we have is render. Oops. So if we go to render, here, the screen's getting a little bit angry. Go to render. And render will actually give you this kind of cool, more detailed look where you can actually control your lighting and you can actually make a render which will give you this super high quality picture of it. It's going to go through a few cycles and it might take a little bit, but eventually what you'll get is this really detailed picture of it. So if you want to do a render, wait until it's finished rendering, take a screenshot and put that in your submission and I'll give you a bonus point. Yeah, because rendering is actually a really cool thing that you can provide to a customer. It gives a high quality image that you can really see how it's going to look. So that's the submission, so make sure you have your screenshot with all of your parts. Make sure everything's named correctly. Make sure it has its correct materials assigned because we are going to be putting this into CFD and actually doing a fluid simulation. All right, so thanks. Have a great day.